Welcome to Taking the Rams by the Horns, a podcast that takes current affairs out of current affairs. This is an award-winning podcast in partnership with Sowetan Live. I'm your host, Rams Mabote. Thank you very much for subscribing to this content. Thank you very much for liking it. And thank you very much for sharing. Please continue to do that. It is the only way we survive, those of us in this business. I read, and I read for different reasons. I read when I'm bored. I read when I'm curious. I read when I want to write. Sometimes I read when I want to read. So recently I found myself reading about famous leaders who changed history forever. Typically, almost all of them are men. Most of them are white. No guessing there, right? And almost all of them from the global north. Truth is, there are many women who qualify to be on this list, but they have been ignored for different reasons. These include, or may include, former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, who single-handedly destroyed the union movement in the United Kingdom. Only COSATU has ever come close to matching Thatcher's record in killing the workers' movement. And then there was former Argentinian First Lady Eva Perón, who at some point was more popular than her husband, Juan Perón, until she infamously told the voters to eat cake. Truth is, right here on our doorstep, we have a woman who rightfully belongs in this list of famous people who changed the world. No, silly, not Nongaus. That dreamer actually stole our chance of being the world's biggest beef producer when she instructed the entire Xhosa nation to kill the livestock. Now, as well as cake, it is Argentina that is feeding us beef. Don't cry for me, Nongaus. Not even Helen Zille belongs on this list of people who changed the world forever. The lifetime leader of the Democratic Alliance has achieved a lot of things, including identifying black successors of herself and quickly destroying them. But that is hardly noble. So, no Nobel Prize for you, madam. The South African woman whose name should be etched in this list of global people who've changed the world is only one human being. She is the minister in the presidency, Ntshavheni. This South African woman has shown great intelligence, but even lately, intuition. I know a lot of you have never heard of her, but trust me, you have heard her before. Even though you may not have heard what she says, but I swear you have heard her every time she speaks, because she speaks a lot. Her lips move. Her lips move a lot. But this episode is not about bashing our Khumbudzo. With apologies to Mark Anthony, fellow South Africans, I come here to praise Khumbudzo, not to bury her. So let's compare her with some of the so-called famous men who changed the world. First, let's start with British wartime Prime Minister Winston Churchill, who once said, quoted again and again over the years and attributed for one of the greatest motivations for the Allied forces to defeat Germany. I think that Khumbudzo years later had a better comeback. When we were beset with a problem of unused mine hijackings, reportedly by foreign nationals, Khumbudzo would not take it and was completely flabbergasted by suggestions that government must send provisions underground. Talk about concomitant action right there. The Allies won the war. Khumbudzo moved the jaw. Another famous leader mentioned in my reading is Cleopatra, the leader of ancient Egypt in Roman times. Now, Cleopatra is credited for industrializing old Egypt, introducing trade and strategic political alliances. Well, you don't have to look too hard to see how our very own Khumbudzo matches people like Cleopatra in her economic successes, which include recently she was accused of allegedly benefiting from a 2.5 million rand tender in Bapalaborwa local municipality. Well, you can think about it as corruption, but I see it as the minister putting a small town in the political map. The only accusation you cannot make against Khumbudzo is the one the Romans made about Cleopatra, which is that she was a beautiful seductress. I don't think you can make that accusation. And then there was Adolf Hitler. No, don't you dare insinuate that I'm accusing Khumbudzo Ntshavheni of being a Nazi. Far from it. This young lion of the glorious movement of the people cannot be accused of that. But like Hitler, this quirky kid rose from obscurity to notoriety in a short space of time. 1 minute, she's roped into the famous, or shall we call it the infamous CR17 campaign, and soon thereafter, there are allegations that she has enriched herself with a 5 million rand pocketing from the 1 billion rand fund. I think it's clutching at straws there. I mean, if you ask me, in the scheme of billion rand, what is 5 million rand? Nyamsugelu minister, man. But who will forget this moment in history? Well, like Dr. Martin Luther King, so did Khumbudzo have a dream. She had a dream that South Africa has a threat of a coup d'etat. Yes, she had that dream. Maybe it was a nightmare if you think about it, right? I mean, right, South Africa. We can't manage criminals down the road. I mean, even Mapanyaza of Panyaza, we can't do much. How do we dream of a coup? But our minister dreamt of a coup. She had a dream, like Dr. Martin Luther King. But relax, as a good government that we have, they identified that threat and we are all safe, says our minister. Shame on someone who accused her of warning. Rather, I read this on the internet. Somebody accused the minister's warning of a coup as a mental fart. Shame on you. I think that stings. You can't say that about the minister. That stings. We could not have had a better minister in charge of our intelligence, right? I mean, think about it. She identifies a coup and she stops it, man, quickly. In the words of James Bond, Khumbudzo is the spy who loved us. And then there was the industrialist Henry Ford, the American who was the innovator who founded the Ford Motor Company. This is the pioneer who included women, minorities, and people with disabilities in his businesses, thus changing the labor movement of the United States of America forever. But so did Khumbudzo. Because you guys have short memories, let me remind you. At some point, she was Minister of Small Business Development. And one day, she famously accused small, medium, and micro enterprises of defrauding government by inflating their prices. Revolutionary, if you ask me. Now SMEs know their place, right? In return, Khumbudzo was rewarded for such wisdom. She got promoted. And finally, the one person I thought I can compare her to is none other than Steve Jobs. Fact is, the tech industry would not be what it is today had it not been for one Stephen Paul Jobs, who lived in our times. The co-founder of the Apple company has changed the world forever with his inventions and later iterations that have enhanced world communication, right? I mean, today we queue at 2 a.m. for yet another phone. Today we do amazing things on our tablets and stuff, thanks to Steve Jobs. He changed the world and we all saw it. Well, nearly 3 decades later, since the launch of Apple, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni went 10 steps ahead. She brought the country the lunar eclipse. Yes, 2 weeks ago, her department released a media statement stating that, I quote, South Africa will experience a total lunar eclipse tonight, brought to you by Minister Khumbudzo Ntshavheni. There was even a poster. There was even a poster to this effect. Now, folks, this is another one step for woman and a giant leap for mankind. You gotta have to agree. In fact, Neil Armstrong's got nothing on this woman. But at the release of this groundbreaking news, a few questions came to my mind. Did this go out on tender? How much was it? Which comrade got the tender? It always goes to a comrade. Who got the kickback? Was this fruitless expenditure? Was there a clean audit of this tender? Because we battle with clean audits. We actually make news when we have clean audits because that's not what we do normally. Did any of the beneficiaries of the lunar eclipse be cheated of their right to witness it? I mean, we always have these schemes that we create for the people, but sometimes some guy in the OR Tambo district in the Eastern Cape doesn't get the benefits of what was meant for them. Some fellow in Seshego somewhere gets robbed of a thing that was exactly planned for them. So I had to ask myself, did everybody who was meant to receive the sight of this lunar eclipse get it? Or as usual, somebody pocketed part of it and kept it to themselves? These were the questions in my head. And I thought, I wonder if I'll ever get answers to it, because as you know, this minister, by the way, who's also responsible for government communication, is not known for direct answers. So I am not holding my breath. However, fortunately, Khumbudzo and her people, like that other famous person who changed the world, Abraham Lincoln, realized that you can fool some of the people all of the time, and all of the people some of the time, but you cannot fool all of the people all of the time. And so finally, she and her people corrected their lie. They realized that in spite of previous experience of corruption and theft, it was going to be hard to claim the lunar eclipse as a victory of this government. At least not this government. Maybe other governments can claim it in the future, not this one. That would be lunatic of this government to claim it. Get it? So, besides, South Africa is preoccupied with very serious matters now, right? Like yet another political party being formed, having stolen a name from the library of the ANC and everything else from Malawi. It must come back to us. So for someone whose middle name, by the way, is Silence, that's her name. She is Khumbudzo Silence Ntshavheni. Our minister does not really value the art of silence. So I have always thought, every time she opens her mouth, she puts her foot in it. Some claim she also puts in our misappropriated money too. I don't know anything about that. I'm just a consumer of information. And so, Minister, here's my advice. Every time or next time you are tempted to speak, read something. And I have something for you to read. Nothing hectic. In the words of Barry White, I don't want you to work that hard. So I'm going to recommend light reading for you. It is this book that I penned called The Sweetest Taboo. Trust me, Minister. You're going to love this. It will never get you into trouble. You do not have to smoke anyone out of any hole to read this book. You actually do not even have to make news, because that could get you into trouble again. But while at it, minister and your people, do me another favor. Subscribe to this content, share it, and like it. From me, Rems Mavote, goodbye and God bless.